Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us again as we close out March with a webinar that I've actually been looking forward to. This is going to be fun. We're talking about upcoming events and trends in menswear. Before I turn it over to Mr. Dane Cohen to introduce the panel, I did want to go over a few ground rules for the webinar just to make sure you have the best experience with our session. So GoToWebinar actually has two different options for audio. You can either connect with your computer audio or listen in on the phone. So please choose whichever is best for you. The second thing is this is an open panel. So please use the questions panel in GoToWebinar and feel free to ask any of the panelists a question, and we will address all of those towards the end in a live Q&A. The most frequent question that we get is, are you recording this? And absolutely yes. If you do need to leave or if you want to review the recording with your team, we're going to send a recording out to all registrants after this. So who is Management One? For those of you who aren't familiar with us, thank you for joining. Management One is actually here to provide financial security for our people, our clients, and our affiliates. And we do that through merchandise intelligence and educational sessions like this one for independent retailers. We operate with a set of core values being a generous heart, courage, curiosity, adaptability, commitment, and collaboration. And Management One has made a specific commitment to increase racial and ethnic diversity in our community and our company and our network. And we're really excited in the next couple of months this summer to roll out some programs that we've been developing in the better part of the last 12 months. So that's going to be exciting coming up. But for now, I wanted to turn the panel over to Dane Cohen, our business development manager here at Management One.
Thank you, Nico. And, I join in your excitement about being here today. I've really been looking forward to this conversation. So with me today, joining in on the round table, we have Edwina Culego from the VP of Liberty Fairs. So Edwina will be joining us. Brian O'Neill, who is the founder of Brigade in Cleveland. Brian also is a M1 retail expert and a client as well. And then we have Ace Graham joining us. Ace is the owner of Alchemy based in Birmingham. So, we really wanted to round this out with a full kind of perspective from the retail side, from the industry side. And of course, we also have Paul Erickson joining us today, who is Management One's Director of Sales and our veteran retail and inventory expert. So we're going to hear from Paul at the end to really dig into some of those inventory strategies as we move forward. So, the topic of today's webinar is getting back on offense. And, I think we find ourselves here moving into April in a really interesting space. The vaccine rollout is well underway. I hope everyone on the call either has gotten a first dose or is, starting to plan how they're going to get that first dose. We've seen the rollout now increased, and President Biden has really made an effort to increase that to all adults. So that's something that is, I really think, fueling optimism within not only the business industry, but specifically retail. And I think there's just a fresh perspective of what could be on the other side of what's behind us this past year. So, one of the things we're really looking forward to is the return to in-person events. And so, Edwina, let's kick off. And I want to hear a little bit more about what Liberty has planned coming up, because I know we have a few exciting announcements.
We do. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm super excited to be on this talk with Management One today. And yes, we have announced that we're finally returning to live shows. And we're starting off in Miami, July 10th to 12th. So Liberty, which is our men's and women's contemporary show, combined with Cabana, which is our women's resort lifestyle and swim show, will join forces at the Miami Beach Convention Center this summer. We've been obviously monitoring the rollout of the vaccines and seeing other smaller regional shows pop up. And so we have the confidence to come out and say that we're going to bring the industry together again and get back to business, which is what we all want.
Yeah, so Adrina, that's really exciting, and hopefully I'll be able to join you down there. But I think the big question on a lot of people's minds is, we've definitely moved into a place where everyone has quickly adapted to digital settings, right?
Yeah.
And so I know Liberty has pivoted really quickly into offering, digital elements and digital events that are centered around the buying market. How's that going to all look now? With the return of in-person events, does the digital end of things just go away, or are we now in kind of a new evolution of how we look at trade events?
It's definitely a new evolution. I mean, we had to accelerate really quickly into digital and to look at what that offering was for our retailers and our brands and the community in general. And so, yes, our business model has forever changed. We are now going to offer in-person live events, which is our traditional business model, but also there will always be a virtual offering for to continue, because it's vital. And for a lot of our international retailers, our top international retailer comes from Canada, obvious, but also Japan, the UK, France. Many of those buyers are still not able to attend our shows. And so we have to continue providing an option for them. And the same thing for brands who are not able to come out and exhibit. And so I think the virtual component is here to stay. We are now trying to figure out how to marry the two worlds, how to represent brands, for example, at the shows who are not able to come, so that retailers who are walking the show floor can still discover them. So that's one of the things. And we're also looking at our website differently. How can buyers go on the Liberty Fair's website and still experience our offering of amazing brands? And so to answer your question, in short, the omni-channel approach is definitely what we are taking on, and it'll be interesting to see how that evolves in time. Like, I'd love to see an iPad in every booth where buyers could put all of their orders in one place, and then just have that populate and have them have all their orders in their office when they get back. So, how we marry those two worlds will be interesting, but we do hope that it happens quickly and that everyone's happy with the two worlds that we're colliding now.
Yeah, and Brian, Ace, I'd love for either one of you to jump in here, and just to get a sense from the retailer perspective, how has buying been? Is digital something, in the virtual event, something that you've kind of just gotten used to at this point, and that's your go-to method at this point, or are you guys excited to jump back into kind of a live aspect of trade events?
I'll let you take a crash course first, Brian.
So I enjoyed the digital platform. It was easy. You can do it from your office. You're cutting expenses. It was a good approach for existing vendors, trying to find new business, trying to find new vendors, trying to find an expansion to your business inside the vendors and in shows and things like that, and just that experience that you have when you go to New York or you go to Miami, you go to Dallas, just wasn't there for us. So as much as I like the digital, I can't wait to go back to the shows in person.
I think I can piggyback off of that. It's very interesting because when I would attend in-person trade shows, and especially in New York, you have this incredibly busy schedule where you're trying to, meet all these different people in all these different places. And it was like, man, somebody who was doing really good work with their imagery and their descriptions, like you banked on that and you said, okay, I don't have to go to that showroom. Maybe I can just meet them for dinner. We can just kind of catch up on things, but I could save some time by not going to that showroom. But it's incredibly challenging now to do buys because you always want to see, touch, and feel. Like you want to understand material story, you want to understand execution, and that's just something that doesn't really translate so well over digital. So I'm super excited to get back in the swing of in-person things, but at the same time, I think it's also forced a lot of brands to start really focusing on attention to details when it comes to imagery, not so much relying on CADs, which is, I understand it's a lot easier to do, but for the buyer, and that I guess I'm considering myself, it's way easier to be in person and to be able to understand that.
Yeah. Did it hurt at all not to have this past year to really discover new brands? Was that at all a little bit of a hit, or were you able to do that through kind of the digital platforms?
So for me, it definitely hurt because I always like to walk the trade show and I walk every aisle. Like I come into Liberty and I go left and I literally walk down every aisle and back up the other side. And I'm pretty much looking at merchandising. I'm looking at how the brand is presented. I'm looking at the faces of the people that are sitting in the booths. And if you're engaging in the right way, I may take a stop and take a look. And it's happened so many times where I found things that I didn't expect to find just by doing that. So yes, that hurt tremendously, but at the same time, I'm a consumer too. So I'm relying on all these blogs and all these websites to be able to let me know what's new. But I definitely feel far more behind than I have in the past when it comes to discovering new things. I'm usually one that has like a thumb on the pulse of what's new and what's coming around to be able to share with the consumer here. But I feel way in the dark now, and people are sharing stuff with me that I didn't even know about, and it makes me feel like less involved. So yeah.
We're gonna
Right.
get you back, Ace. Almost there.
I know. Please hurry.
And Edwina, I'm going to pose this question to the guys in a moment, but I want to get from kind of the top line perspective. What can we expect at the upcoming shows in terms of trends? I know that they're both from a brand perspective and a category perspective. What are retailers really going to be seeing walking into shows in the next few months?
That is a great question. I'm telling you, my emails are flooded with brands across so many categories that are like, "You're back. I heard about Miami. Send me more information." And so, it's a wide range. I would say, traditional Liberty DNA, you're going to see a lot of denim. I was actually speaking with an amazing new New York-based denim brand called Amendi. And they focus on, they're sustainable, so they're fully traceable and transparent. They use dead stock. The whole process is awesome. And so we're speaking with them about doing a live installation and really educating the retailers and attendees on how their products are ethically made. So that's definitely one of the trends. Is brands in general are just looking to create better products, to do good, to find more ethical and social responsible ways of creating. And so that's definitely something that I'm seeing in my inbox a lot. And even just looking at blogs with Sharifa and figuring out like who are the new taste makers. We just had a conversation with Daily Paper, which we love, and they just opened up the dopest store in Soho during a pandemic, unfortunately. But they're looking to really elevate their presence and to make sure that they're driving traffic into their new store that they open in Manhattan. So yes, street, surf, skate, obviously, we're going to be in Miami next to Cabana. So I'm seeing a lot of swim and resort wear as well for men. There's an amazing brand out of Italy called Tiki Napoli that's coming to the show, and they're showing swimwear, awesome shorts. And so various categories. I'm seeing a lot of color, which I'm really excited about. I think we've all been at home. We've been in the dark, and everyone's really ready to come out. And so I think we can expect to see in the form of trends, a lot of color, bold statements, patterns, that sort of thing. So yeah, it's a lot. We are definitely going to be sending out communication as to brands that have signed up in due time, but it's looking very promising.
Yeah. All right, great. And Brian, I want to get your thoughts here. Edwina just touched on denim as, obviously a mainstay category at, from Liberty. Sustainability. Where is the I mean, this is a loaded question, and we'll drill down into it, but where is the customer's mindset right now? They're coming out of a year which, has been challenging for everyone. Where are they looking moving forward?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like they're looking for something new. They're looking for something fresh. Like Edwina hit it perfectly with new brands that are coming out. That's what the trade shows have to execute. And we as retailers, we've been inside just like our customers have, and we haven't, we've been worried about what we're going to sell, how much we're going to sell, what we're going to do with the product that we had when we weren't, when we were closed and everything. Like, we're still worrying about it. So I think it's coming out with something new, and for us as retailers, introducing that to the customer, because I think they're going to be looking for something new, something fresh. you know, a little bit of change, like Edwina said, some color, you know, but I think it's gonna stay in this casual realm. I think people got comfortable. They you know, I completely shifted to casual. You know, I'm denim, jogger, tee, sweat, and it's just, that's where I am. That's where my customer wants to be. But at the same time, I've got to introduce new brands. I've got to introduce fresh goods. I've got to be on top of it. So I think that's where the customer is going to be, and he's going to
Yeah,
be following with us, you know, as retailers.
Exactly.
so I want to hit on that kind of casual moment right there. And, you know, for me, the pandemic, I think sped up so many trends that were moving within the industry. And I think one of those, you know, in menswear, if we're going to talk about the menswear industry, it's this idea of what happens to kind of tailoring and haberdashery, right? And Ace, you and I talked about it, and I think it kind of warrants a frank conversation on, you know, with the industry now moving in a certain direction and probably sped up by the last year, where should retailers be looking to in terms of the future of what a menswear store looks like?
No, it's interesting. I've always felt like, I guess I learned in a different way because I spent a lot of time in the European Union, right? So there was never really an emphasis on suits, or, you know, it was always come as you are. It was always whatever makes you comfortable. And I would go places and they would ask me, I would ask, you know, what's the dress code? Because I'm so used to having a dress code in the United States, and people would say, oh, there's no dress code, just come as you are. So you find yourself being the most dressed up you've ever been with a t-shirt and maybe a blazer on, or a tuxedo jacket or something to that nature. So early on, this was, you know, 7 years ago. So when we came to do business in the United States, it was really like, okay, that's the model that we're coming out with out of the gate. You know, it's like just trying to blend this space where you can have some casual things, but really like you need to be able to have a starting spot for this person and then a transition for them as well too, if they want to kind of get into that, but really focusing on, you know, come as you are. And that's just what's been working for us. It's a place where you can come and you might be able to get a nice blazer, but at the same time, you can always buy denim, you can always buy t-shirts, because we want to arrive with the customer where they are and just kind of take them on this journey where they can trust us with what we do. So I don't know if I answered your question directly, but I personally think that you have to be able to connect to the consumer and understand that you can educate them on it's really okay for you to show up how you want, in a sense, within reason.
I mean, I'll just put it, I guess, even more directly. You know, I'm not sure about the exact assortments of, you know, your stores, but, you know, is tailoring even something that's in the mix right now?
Unless we're talking about denim, no. But tailoring, no, it's not a thing for us. It never was, and we just kind of stay out of that arena because there's so many people that do it so well in Birmingham, and it's not our space. It's just not where we want to be. You know, if there's a guy who's, you know, wearing suits every single day and he wants to transition into something else, then, you know, we can definitely service you. But we're not in that space at all where we want to, you know, chase haberdasheries or you know, tailors or anything to that nature.
Right. You know, I think this is it's an interesting moment for a lot of menswear stores that have been focused on those categories, because there are such a wealth of incredible contemporary, advanced contemporary streetwear brands out there. So it'll be interesting to see if, you know, those can be infused into some of their assortments. You know, as tailoring, we'll see what happens, but as we kind of net out with that. So Brian, you know, we're talking about getting back on offense. We're talking about, you know, looking forward. You know, let's get into a little nuts and bolts. What's been your approach in terms of your optimism in buying right now? How are you going back into the markets?
Well, I mean, a long time ago when I first started doing this, someone from Management One, a very smart person from Management One, they made a statement. They said, plan the buy the plan. So I've never come away with that. I've never forgot it in 15 years. So my approach is more planned out, more quantitative than it's ever been before. It's data driven. There's little room for risk and guess, but I mean, which is the fun part, right? Is trying to develop new businesses, trying to take the risk, is trying to do, but we've minimized that and we've become more data driven than ever. I mean, our approach, we bang on the plan on demand like it's our Bible. So we always have to be looking out in front of it, whether we're looking at immediate goods for our sales, we're looking at our current inventory, next month's inventory, we're looking at our actual, our revised open to buy, and we're looking at our cost of purchases. So we're constantly looking at the data. We're constantly looking at what we need to do by category. And, and over the time, over this, even before the pandemic and into the pandemic, which it exaggerated a little bit more, but we built, I built this team, and it's where it used to just be me going and buying, and like Ace said, walking up and down the aisles and finding new things and finding good marketing plans. It's me, it's a sales team, it's a buying team, it's an affiliate, in Jesse, and it's a planner. I've got a team of 7 people doing buying for a store that's 2,500 square feet. So you have this plan, you have this team, you have this effort going forward. I don't feel all the pressure on myself, but yeah, if I do make a mistake, it is my paycheck that gets hit, but I have a plan, right? I go to every market now. I go to every meeting online. There's a plan there, and I plan the buy and I buy the plan. And if something doesn't come out right, we go back and we with our data, we can figure out exactly how or why we made that mistake. Cash flow, luckily we've been pretty good on cash flow, but it all comes down again to your data. If you're buying your plan, then you're really going to understand that your cash is working for you. There's something on the plan of demand, cost of purchases. You're looking over the 3 months to 6 month to 12 month, and if that's high, that means your cash is a little tight, or you might be able to be opened up to take a little risk there. But yeah, the long-winded version of it, yeah, that's kind of our thing. It's just more planning, more understanding the data-driven process.
And we'll definitely dig more into why planning is so important. Paul will lead us through that conversation. But I think you hit on something really specific there, and that's making sure that cash is flowing through your business, right? Yeah. Because what I think a lot of people learned through the past year is that even with fluctuations in inventory and sales, you could still do more with less, and you could put your inventory to use, right? Ace, how's it been moving forward for you in terms of keeping that inventory flowing in? Have you had any changes to your plan of attack when it comes to markdown strategy or flowing goods in? How are you kind of looking at this moving into the summer and fall seasons?
So something that we learned quickly and this is something that we just talk about in-house a bunch. What we learned is being on the side where we're relying on brand A or brand B to provide us with goods was really challenging for us, because when the pandemic is upon us, everything shuts down and there's no distribution. We're in a position where we're only stuck with what we have, so we've really kind of pivoted into a space where we want to produce private label product, just in a sense of what can we control ourselves, who can we work with directly that we can start getting things produced. So that's really been where our focus has been, is to not only work with the brands and form some sort of consistency, but also taking things into our own hands and developing what we can with small producers ourselves.
That's great. That's great. And I think that, Brian, anything on private label, or is that something that you've kind of?
No, I like what he's talking about as far as, you know, you don't, the supply isn't there, but the demand is. And it's just, it was so hard on us as retailers. You know, customers coming in and we want to sell them something so bad, but the suppliers just aren't there for us. So I love it. I love his, you know, Ace's transition into private label. We're doing a little thing ourselves too, you know, in our strongest category. And that's all we're gonna do. We're not gonna try to do pants and shirts and jackets and sweaters and hats. We're just going in our sweat is our strongest category. We're gonna start producing our own sweat.
I think, and just to touch on that, what Brian said, I think it's so important to understand that with everyone transitioning and this athleisure wear kind of thing is really big, and people are shifting. Like I'm in a downtown city, so you know, there's nobody going to the corporate office. There's no, you know, everyone's working from home, so there's no need for that suit that guy's wearing 5 days a week. So it's kind of like, what is he wearing now? You know, and for us in my market, you know, great t-shirts, great denim, great sweat is an easy thing. And people always come into the store, and whether they find something from a brand that they like in our selection, that's one thing. But people always want, for us, we're in our community a lot, right? So we have a nonprofit organization that comes in and helps. It's our organization, of course, but we do a lot of things within our community. So people want to support our store based on our actions in our community. So it opens up this huge opportunity for us to be able to sell people product that's private label, specifically representing the store, and they feel great about their purchase. And they'll spend, you know, the same amount of money that they would spend on jeans and a sweatshirt with an Alchemy product. So we've kind of understood that now just through our efforts. So that's really been our I guess, pivot.
You know, it's funny, Ace, because you talked about that demand. And I remember my first day, a conversation with my mentor years ago, my first day on a new job. And he said to me, if I teach you one thing, it is, I would always rather be over inventory than under inventory. There is nothing worse for your business than being under inventory, because I could turn too much inventory into cash, but you'll never know how much sales you lost if you don't have those goods on your floor. So it's good to hear you speak to that. And, you know, just in terms of, I just want to get back to the customer for a second. Is there any tactics or strategies that you guys are taking to really fuel sales with the customers? You know, I know we hear a lot about digital and e-com and a lot of buzzwords in that space. And I think for a lot of people, it was a lifeline through the past year. But moving forward, you know, how are you really connecting with your customer and making sure that, you know, they're engaged with your store, they're engaged with your brand, and, you know, you're getting that business constantly churning?
You know, I think on a, you know, we're lucky we have a really good, like Ace probably does too, is really good local clientele. But we, you know, I think our big outreach is of course social media. Our sales staff is constantly on the phone, texting, calling, getting people drawn into the store. Luckily, it's local that they can just call them into the store and get them in there by the weekend or whatever they would have to do. You know, we want to get back into kind of this special ordering realm of getting people exclusive products. And then the last is just being consistent for them. You know, when they come in twice a week or they come in once a month, either time we have something new for them. We have something else to show them. And for our own sales staff, we have something that, you know, new for them and something for them to be able to show the customer.
Yeah, I think that idea of keeping fresh goods flowing is so important. Ace, you know, just on this topic, you know, I know that in menswear and with a lot of brands and stores, we're seeing this kind of like scarcity mindset of, you know, limited drops, you know, hot items. Is that something that an approach you're taking in terms of, you know, getting that customer invested in a new drop or a new products that are coming in?
For sure. And I mean, so from our brand partners perspective, whatever, you know, release date inventory comes along with that date, we're definitely a part of that program. But honestly, for us, man, we've taken a completely different look at it, and we've said, how do we help our community, right? Like, how do we stay in front of our community? We've doubled down on that more than anything. And for us, that's translated to driving customers to the store because they want to support what we're doing in our community. And I know I've said that like 100 times already in this hour that we're on, but that's really where it's been a thing for us. It's like, how do we partner with a local organization? How do we partner with some organization to help give away hand sanitizer or free masks or, you know, free shoes or whatever the thing is? And then that ends up on the news, that ends up in publication, that ends up, you know, on social media sponsors, and it just drives customers to us. So we've always felt like, you know, it's one thing to sell shoes and clothes, but it's a whole nother thing to be able to affect change in your community. And by doing that, we hope that the consumer, when it's time for them to buy shoes, they want to buy shoes from us. And it's just been luckily working for us in that way. But we're very intentional about engaging our community and assisting them in whatever they need.
Yeah, I think you hit on such a good point. And I think it's almost like a tale of two cities in a certain way, in the sense that, you know, I think people really want convenience right now. So maybe they're going to some of those kind of, you know, I don't want to say the A word, but, you know, maybe they're going to a certain massive retailer for just easy stuff that's going to be delivered to their door. But I think when it comes down to that community aspect and supporting local and feeling part of a community again, you know, I think the heart has come back to retail in a little bit. So it's great to hear about some of those elements that you're taking on to really engage your customer, and not just look at it as a, you know, transactional relationship, but a community relationship.
So Dane, for me, to give you some insight on that, it's very different for us because we're an outdoor store. We're in the most densely populated area in Alabama, I should say, but definitely in Birmingham. And as we talked about earlier, there's bars and restaurants surrounding us. So we don't have this shopping experience. So when we first started business in Birmingham, we thought, okay, we're going to be this retailer that focuses on exclusive goods and premium products, and that's still a thing for us, but we also had to understand that we're a neighborhood door. You know, the closest mall that you can get to where I am is, you know, 8 miles down the road. So instead of thinking that you're servicing one particular customer or going at them in the way that you would if you were in a mall, we had to approach it from a different perspective. And a thing for us here is, in the area that I'm in, everything is pretty much local. There's no chain restaurants, you know, and chain bars and things like that. We drive foot traffic, you know, amongst supporting local businesses, and that's a huge thing for us in Birmingham. So we can't even think about it in any other way. But how do we support our community? How do we give to our community so our community can give back to us?
I love that, and that's some great advice for, you know, anyone on the call that's kind of trying to take that mindset. You know, Brian, you were speaking before, and I just want to kind of flesh this out for anyone who may have gotten lost for a second. You had used the word plan on demand. Now, you know, for anyone that's a Management One client, plan on demand is second nature. But you know, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're referring to when you're talking about a plan, and then more so, and I think this is really important, you know, as we go back into buying markets, what does it look like to have an open to buy plan? You know, I think that perhaps the days of, you know, just kind of going in and flying by the seam of your pants may not be the strategy to take anymore. What's your thoughts on that?
Right. And like I talked about, you know, you have to plan the buy, right? And that's the key factor. And the plan on demand, right? If you're a Management One client, like you said, you know exactly what that is. But it's you know, it's the data that comes out of your POS system that you can actually use to plan your buy. It's, you know, for us, we look at our sales figures, right? Whether it's immediate or it's 6 months down the road. We look at exactly, is the plan right? Can we challenge it? Can we ask questions? Can we see? And that's how, you know, the affiliate and the planner become part of the team. So, you know, we get it, we hone it down and we get it to where it needs to be. Then we look at, you know, current inventory. What do we have on hand now? Where is it going to be in 6 months when we start bringing these goods in? Are we going to be able to cash flow it? All of that is on the plan on demand. It's an amazing tool, and it's something that has has to be implemented. You know, I've been with Management One forever, so it's my lifeline. It's what I do. It's all I know now. So, but it's proven successful for us, right? We're still in business after 20 years. So I feel like going to market and for the retailer to understand what they need to do, it's not flying off the seat of your pants. You just can't do that anymore. You know, how many times has that got you in trouble? How many times has that almost put you out of business? You have to have a plan. You have to understand the data that is driving your business, right? I think that now more than ever, you have this opportunity with stimulus, with different things like Ace talks about. You know, you're part of a community. You can reach out and understand that people want to come to your store. People want to see, people are demanding new product and fresh goods. So have it for them, but have a plan to get it. Don't inundate yourself with product because you think just everyone's going to come out and want fresh goods. You know, buy what you can, buy exactly what you need, and be able to sell it for as much profit as you can, right?
Right. You know, and Paul, I'm gonna kind of transition over to Paul and bring him into the conversation. You know, just so everyone knows, we'll have some free tools, a cash flow tool and a vendor performance scorecard tool. And Paul, you can touch on the vendor performance for a moment. But you know, why is it so important, Paul, to kind of understand how your brands are performing, and more so, and I know we don't have the slide for it right here, but we'll be sending out a tool called the 12-week cash flow. You know, why are these tools so important right now to retailers?
Well, I think Dane, the tools have always been important, but one of the things that I want to talk about on this webinar is how the tools have changed, and we need to understand that the pandemic has changed retail. Dane, you said something earlier in this presentation that was very, very important. The pandemic there's been trends, but the pandemic has accelerated those trends, and some of them are happening at light speed. And some of those trends from a financial merchandising performance have changed dramatically. And that's one of the things I would like to talk about on the over the next few minutes, is what has changed and what were the old metrics that retailers were using and what are the new post-pandemic metrics that retailers should be looking at. We can talk about that in every level, from classification to department to store to vendor. But essentially what they have in common is that retailers need to be looking at cash flow to a much greater extent than they ever had before. And I can go into that if you want me to at this point in time. Dane?
Yeah, you know, I think that that's definitely the crux of what we want to touch upon is, you know, getting back on offense and keeping that cash flowing through your business, because there may not be many more important things than that. And Paul, just to kick off, I know that, you know, we just got some very interesting information from a Management One perspective on how planning, you know, a lot of people said this past year that planning can't be done. It's too much of a volatile time. Is that true?
Well, yeah, we've heard, you know, this has been a once in a 100-year event, right, Dane? So we actually decided that we would go back in time and to see how well if predicting sales during a pandemic is impossible, because we would hear that from so many retailers. I don't know how you guys can project how much revenue I'm going to be doing over the next month, the next quarter, the next season, when we don't know how long the pandemic is going to last. We don't know its effect really in terms of customer demand, that type of thing. So we went back and looked, and from July 2020 through the end of last month, the end of February, and we found some really, really interesting data. And a lot of this has to do with how we plan in general. You know, we talk about quantitative forecasting, you know, multiple linear regression forecasting, all these technical terms that we use at Management One. But what has proven to be, I would say, eerily accurate is how accurate they are. In other words, from that period from July through February, which I believe is 7 months, we had projected our revenue for our clients to be $783 million in sales. The actual revenue that came through was $786 million. Now, what's really important, that's, by the way, that we were off 0.31%. Predicting sales during a pandemic is impossible. Wrong. Now, what's also important to understand is that, and this is a little wonky, Dane, in terms of getting into it, but what's also important in this is the standard deviation. And because close numbers like this could be influenced by a large client that we were very close in terms of our projection, while other clients were way off. But when we looked at it from the perspective of standard deviation, we were off 1.1%, which means that most of the clients that we worked with, we were right on the money. Why is this so important? Why is it important to know how much business we can do and project? Because if you can accurately project your sales revenue in the future, and not just for your store, but for each category within your store, you are going to be in a much better prepared condition relative to inventory positions. So with a high degree of likelihood that this coming fall in Q4, business is going to be a lot closer to normal, I think now is the time to really make the right decisions in terms of maximizing your selling opportunities around your inventory positions. And so, one of the things we have to understand is, what do we need to track? I mean, am I currently tracking the right things? And I'd like to talk a little bit about that over the next few minutes. Number one, am I efficiently rotating inventory in and out of the store? What do my sales projections show? What do the sales patterns show? Are sales trending up or down 30, 60, 90 days? What is our turnover appropriate? Do I have too much inventory, too little? Am I drilling down into my problems and finding where those are? But more importantly than that, where are my opportunities? One of the things that we have at Management One is we have all kinds of reports that just simply address those issues. This is an example, a little bit of an inventory action report of drilling down. So when you're not looking just at your accessory category, you're drilling down into let's say your hats. You've got fashion hats here and winter hats. Well, again, if we look at the sales trend this month, winter hats is trending at $3,400, while fashion hats is trending at $5,400, doing much better in fashion. But if you look over to the inventory position, sitting at $6,000 in inventory and our trending is $5,400, well, you don't have to be a statistical analyst to analyze that. You're going to be out of fashion hats here in the next week or two, while winter hats are sitting at $13,000. If you drop down and look at, say, if you're just looking at your business in terms of bottoms and not breaking it down into the categories underneath bottoms, let's say skirts and jeans, well, you're looking at skirts and jeans in this store that month to date right now, as of last night, we're doing the same amount of revenue. But if you, again, look over, it's not just how much revenue or not just how much profit, it's how much inventory do we have sitting there, what is our sell-through? And you can see right now that even though our trend line in skirts is to do $6,500 this month, that simply is not going to happen with an inventory of only $3,100. So two categories doing the same revenue, a vast difference in terms of inventory positions. Look, these are just some very basic metrics that you should have on your scorecard, and we all need scorecards. And metrics are a little bit like how pilots, fly an airplane. They have to trust their instruments, and we have to trust our metrics. And metrics matter. They're important. They help you become more profitable. They can bring in more sales if you understand how to use data. But while retail continues to evolve and adapt to a changing consumer preferences, I think it's critically important to develop what I would call newer or more relevant metrics to accurately value and measure your business. Because I think the current suite of metrics that we've all been brought up with are kind of been built for a time that no longer exists. So let me just throw a few curveballs at everybody that's on the webinar right now and make you maybe think a little bit differently about how you control your inventory. The whole idea right now is more immediate in retail. We need to condense the window of focus. And so instead of having a plan for the next 6 months, we need to break it down into the next 3 months, or even more importantly, the next 12 weeks. Because 12 months carries out way too far in terms of it increases more uncertainty. But 12 weeks allows us as retailers to give us maximum agility in terms of how much we're purchasing, How much, where should we be buying, and where should we be marking down? Now we have, as you mentioned earlier, Dane, the vendor scorecard is online, and these are all free tools that anybody that's on this webinar can go to our website at management-one.com and grab the 12-week cash flow tool.
Yeah, Paul, actually, it's right in the chat. So it's right here in the chat. If anyone is watching along and wants to click into it, it's available right here.
You can make it too easy for everybody, Dane, just too easy. But it is a great tool. And again, it is, I believe, an example of the post-pandemic metrics. What's another post-pandemic metric that's been important, but now becomes critical? Well, we all know how much inventory we have in the store. We know how much inventory we have by category. We know how much inventory we have by department, how much is in the store, by subcategory. But what's really important is how much inventory we have that's current. And how do you define what is current relative to how fast you want to rotate the inventory in and out of the stores? For Brian and Ace's stores, the amount of current inventory is a much shorter window than, say, a traditional men's store with structured clothing. But either one has amount of what we could define as being current inventory. The freshness factor is absolutely critical. There are a number of ways to look at the freshness factor. I thought I'd just share with you a different way to look at it maybe than a lot of people will say, how much of my inventory is less that's been there for more than 3 months or 2 months or 6 months. There's other ways to look at it in terms of our reporting. We could take this jewelry, for example. In this accessory area, jewelry represents 22% of our sales. Now, I'm just looking at 3 numbers here, by the way, and we can make a lot of decisions by looking at 3 percentage points, three percentage numbers. 22% of our sales are in jewelry to accessories. 33% of our inventory is in jewelry. And then last, but certainly not least, only 18% of new product that came in is in jewelry. So what do those 3 numbers go together? If you do 22% of your sales, but have 33% of the inventory and only 18% of that inventory is new, what would that tell you about the direction your jewelry category is going to take relative to revenue? Going south. It's not going to happen simply because the inventory is accumulating, it's aging, and sales are dwindling. Here's a metric that people raise their eyebrows when I say this, but cost of goods sold, which is an accounting metric, and an incredibly important accounting metric, is the most misleading metric in retail. Not the most misleading metric in business, but in retail it is. Why? Just as if people tell you who they are, believe them. In this case, cost of goods sold is what it says it is. In other words, it is the cost of the goods that you sold, not the cost of the goods you purchased. Cost of goods sold is a profit metric. Cost of goods purchased is a cash flow metric. Let me give it to you in a different example. If I purchase 50 widgets and I mark them up 3 times, so they have a 66% initial markup, and after 3 months of the 50 widgets, I sold 5 at full price. Well, my cost of goods sold would have been 33%. Or my profit was 67%. So it would have been a beautiful cost of goods sold. It would show immense profitability in my store by using that metric. But I had 45 sitting on the shelf that still hadn't been sold that I had to pay for. Thus, my cost of goods purchased is a much, much different story. Why is this important? And why is this a post-pandemic metric? Because if the one thing the pandemic has exposed, weak retailers, we lost 25,000 doors, by the way, closed in 2020. 25,000. Those weren't retailers, those were doors. Some retailers went into a complete bankruptcy, Chapter 7. Many others closed 60, 70, 80% of their doors and in a Chapter 11 reorganization. But what did they have in common? When we looked at this at Management One, they did have one thing in common. They were all overly levered, too much debt. And so why is cash flow important going forward? Because in all likelihood, we're going to have another event, God forbid, but we probably will have another event at some point like we've just gone through. And to inoculate ourselves, so to speak, the vaccine is cash flow, and not sitting on too much inventory and too much debt that's going to expose us and make it more difficult. Look, it's It is inventory health has more to do with cash margin dollars than gross margin dollars. And that is something I think we need to absolutely understand. Brian O'Neill actually mentioned this on the webinar earlier. He said one of the important things he looks at a brigade is exactly what his cost of purchases are. And what he's looking at is to make the cost of purchases as low as they can be, so that our inventory expense is not dragging us down. So if you're looking at for the last 12 months in this example where your inventory expense is only 39%, and then you go to maybe another category where here now your inventory expense for the last year is 58%, and for the last 3 months it's 67%, what's happening here? The inventory expense keeps going up and up and up. The cost of goods purchased, not so good, but the cost of goods sold, well, whatever you sold, it would probably look very strong. So there's another pre-pandemic metric called GMROI. GMROI is a very, very has been always an important metric. It is simply looking at the amount of inventory that you have tied up, how many dollars have tied up in inventory, against what was your profit at the end of the year. But that profit could very well be paper profit, and so the new post-pandemic metric is CMROI. What's your cash margin? How much cash did that inventory produce over the last 12 months? That is now the new metric that retailers need to look at. We have it at Management One, of course, where we can look at anything you want to look at and be able to look at your CMROI against your GMROI. And when the GMROI is higher, what does that mean? That means is that our inventory is building faster than our sales. And right now our profits are not, our cash profits are not the same as our paper profits, which creates all kinds of havoc at the end of the year. Look, all of this in the past, we have, I think, relied, and I think many retailers tend to look at the income statement as being the most important measurement in terms of accounting. I'm talking about a shift. I'm talking about a shift, not that the income statement is not important, but I'm talking about a shift to the balance sheet, because the balance sheet measures your financial health of your business. It takes into consideration cash, assets, and liabilities. That now has become, I think, post-pandemic, the true measurement of health for any retail store. And one other thing too, not that it wasn't important pre-pandemic, but decisions have to be made on data that is current, accurate, and recent. In other words, not data from a week ago, not data from last month, data from last night. And using data to make decisions, current data, is important, because other than that, you're just winging it. Because we need to know exactly what's happening as of last night, what's trending, what's performing, where are we struggling. For an example of this, you can take a report like this. Here's our sweater business. We thought we'd sell $95,000 in sweaters this month. Right now, as of last night, our trend is 134. Something's happening in sweaters. So the next thing is, do we have enough inventory? Right now we do, but do we have enough more on order coming in as of last night to cover ourselves for the next several weeks? Well, we have 14,000 on order, but we still have an open to buy of 13,000. So these are the questions that need to be answered, like now. Where are we trending up? Where are we trending down? Where's our inventory position? Are we high, low? Are we about right? A little bit like Goldilocks and, you know, the porridge. Is it too hot, too cold? And then how much more do we have coming? And is that going to be sufficient to continue the trend that we see? And it's important to drill down by store. In this very same client, we have in store 4 that trend in sweaters, which was at 134 against the plan of 95. We see that store 4, the trend was 14,000. The plan was only 8. But in store 7, the plan is 13. Our trend is 9. What's happening? What's the next thing we look at? Inventory. Where we are weak, our current inventory in store 7 is 16,000. 1/2 of the correct assortment where we should be as of last night is sitting in sweaters. Ergo, we're not going to make our goal. We do not have enough product in that store. Another metric is how we look at markdowns. Now, from an accounting perspective, markdowns bad. Obviously, don't take markdowns. But from a merchandising perspective, and this has always been true, markdowns are a tool to generate inventory health. Now, from an accounting perspective, fallacy number one, I think, is don't take markdowns unless you absolutely have to, because they will destroy your profitability. Well, that doesn't make any sense from a merchandising perspective, and here's why. If they destroy your profitability, that would mean they're a zero-sum game, but they're not. It's as if you had a shelf that you had of SKUs that weren't selling, and so you decided, I have to get rid of this, so they're tying up my cash. They are hurting my reputation and to my customers to see the same thing every time they come in the store. So I'm going to mark them all down and get rid of them and wipe my hands of it. And if it's a zero-sum game, you don't replace it, the shelves stay empty. But the point is that you do replace it, that you do bring in new products quickly to replace the things that aren't selling. It's not a zero-sum game, and those new products, when you sell those at probably a higher price, mitigate the cost of the markdowns of what didn't sell. Fallacy number two is, don't tell me to take markdowns. I don't want to be a sale image. My customers, if I'm taking markdowns, my customers will only buy on sale. Fallacy number two. This could be true if you buy so much merchandise, way more than you can sell profitably, that you end up having gigantic sales at the end of the season. And pretty soon your June sales are nothing because they know you're going to have it on sale in July. And so, yes, that can be true if you're not controlling your buying. Or if you are timid because you're worried about profit and not cash flow, again, a shift in what we're talking about pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. Pre-pandemic profits, post-pandemic cash flow, which will lead to profit. And if we're more concerned about cash flow, then the timid markdowns no longer happen. We are aggressive on getting rid of mistakes. We are aggressive in taking care of mistakes. And so when we take a markdown, we do it just like we want to sell fresh merchandise quickly, get it out the door. And when that happens, you won't have a sale image. In fact, most of your customers won't even know it's there because it's gone right away. Timid markdowns tend to accumulate and create the greatest horror stories on a retail floor, which is something that was $500, you marked to $449, didn't sell, $399, didn't sell. 6 months later, you're at $299 and still doesn't sell. And now a third of your sales floor is sitting with all these timid markdowns. That's a fallacy too. Look, a lot of what I'm talking about is knowing where we're going and what's changed in retail. We know what's changed, and we have great advice from really terrific retailers on this webinar. But we also need to know from the perspective financially, what has changed and how we need to react going forward in a post-pandemic world where cash truly is king. I'll turn it back over to you, Dane.
Cash is king. There we go. And I think, listen, I think you really brought that home as to why, that's not just a saying, but a reality, especially in the post-pandemic world. So Paul, thank you so much. I just learned a ton watching this, so I hope everyone else did as well. And, Nico, I know we're coming to the end of our time here, so I know that we may have some questions from the audience.
I'm in your camp. I could have listened to another hour of all of this with Brian and Ace and Paul and Edwina. This has been great. We do have a couple of questions, so I want to be mindful of our panel here. If you guys don't mind, another 5 minutes or so to address a couple of questions from the panel. Excellent. The first one actually comes from CEO of Management One, Mark Weiss. He was listening to Ace and Brian talk about the strategies you guys are using for customer acquisition and how you're messaging your customers. And Mark was wondering, in this pivot during COVID, has your customer base changed or evolved, or how has it grown?
I'm always letting Brian go first.
You're first. All right. I feel like we've kind of our customer has become a little more aware of what we're doing, just because of the scale that we were at when we came out of the pandemic, or when we opened back up, to where we are now. I think we exposed ourselves a little more, became a little more transparent. So I feel like they've opened up to us a little bit more. They feel like, you know, we're a local business. It's probably hard for us. So they're more responsive. So for us to understand that and to take charge of reaching out personally and getting on the phone and texting them and sending them pictures and getting back to that, I mean, it's from when I started, right? Is instead of just using our social media platform and our deck and our everything like that, is really reaching out and hearing, you know, letting the customer hear our voice and understanding what we're trying to do and explaining that it's safe to come in the store. We are really trying hard to get new product in, and we're always going to be on top of, you know, as long as you're there to support us, and we'll support you on making sure, you know, there's new product in the store, making sure that you're aware of what's going on. So that's about that. That's how our interaction is. That's how we're kind of gaining and maintaining customers right now.
So for us, of course, through the closures and social injustice issues that we've had in our city, we were struggling, you know, to get people in the store just because people weren't out. And we just took an approach on it like, you know, we need to let the consumers in our community understand that we're here to help the community. It's not really about selling you something at this time because maybe you don't have the money for it. Maybe you're trying to budget yourself on how you're going to be able to feed your family. So don't worry about us, you know, as far as, you know, buying product from us, you know, on a week over week basis. What can we do to help you? And us taking that approach and just putting hands on the, I guess, foot to the pavement to get engaged in whatever we could in our community to be able to help people, that's turned around for us in twofold. You know, it's come back and people are now coming into the store, and it's our responsibility to make sure that we have inventory in store to be able to sell them. But we're seeing a lot more customers based off of them understanding that, okay, these aren't just some guys that are just trying to push, you know, $300 hoodies. These are guys that are actually in their community giving away things. You know, we gave away 50 pairs of shoes right before Christmas, just, you know, pieces that were displays in store and things that we could have shipped back and, you know, took RTV credits. We were giving these shoes away. I mean, we're in the back of a pickup truck riding around, you know, on what we consider street neighbors, just jumping out saying, hey, what size shoe do you wear? Take those shoes off. Here's a new pair of shoes. And that type of action, getting recognition in our community, has driven customers to us to want to support us even more. So like I said in the beginning, we lost a bunch because people were wanting to shop and they couldn't, especially with the first stimulus checks and everything. There just wasn't product there. But now the consumer is starting to see us for a much bigger person than who we were, you know, previously. We've always had that community engagement, but they see it, you know, because we've doubled down on it now.
Absolutely. Strengthening that local bond with the community is going to reap dividends for months and years to come. I think it was Maya Angelou. The quote from Maya Angelou that I'm thinking of was, people will always remember how you made them feel. And that's going to stick in their brain a lot longer than, like you were saying, selling hoodies for the community. So I wanted to go to the next question here. We are short on time. This question from Neil. When you guys were talking, Brian and Ace, about shifting the mindset for your inventory from traditional to a little more casual, what if the brands aren't making that shift as quickly? I guess more specifically, do you guys come across any situations where the brands that you want to adopt don't want you or don't have the capacity to take you on? They're not ready to shift yet. I'll start with Ace on this one.
That's a tough question. For us, I've been in this weird space since we started this project, man, and I'm only a brand partner to brands that I'm a consumer of already. You know, like we find new things, but if I'm not a consumer of that brand, you know, we don't really operate in the space of trends. You know, what we understand is that in Birmingham, Alabama, our credibility and our consumer expects us to provide them with premium products and premium goods that we vouch for. So for me, I've always bought brands that I would buy, you know, with my personal money, walking into their shop, or someone that I connect with in that way. So we're really about building the relationship. So at this current time, we treated this whole situation like who's essential, who's non-essential, just the same way that they treated us with, you know, non-essential stores had to close their business. So we've moved into that space. And if it doesn't really align with our community initiatives and what we're trying to do, then we're not really even trying to keep those brands around anyway. But for everyone that we've worked with, we've not had to really make any changes because everyone is kind of on the same page in a sense, and we buy that brand for that specific reason for what they already do. Does that make sense?
Got it. Absolutely.
Yeah, ours is you know, we did turn to a lot of brands. I mean, our biggest brand we turned to, and you know, the supply just wasn't there. So you have to go to other brands, but we're strict to buying to what our customer wants, right? It's we have this image we want to create, we want to be artists, but at the same time we have to sell clothes. So we really want to be on the top of what our customer wants. But yeah, there was at times, you know, we went to our brands and maybe they weren't producing a holiday season. So you have to go out and you have to find new brands, and you're talking to other brands and they just don't, like you said, they don't want much to do with you because they already have relationships and they're struggling to get their product on their racks. So we ran into a few problems there. But in the transition period, I feel like, you know, there is going to be a struggle, someone coming out of tailoring and trying to get into sweat and things like that. But you know, like I said, it's about building relationships, and thank God we're going back to shows so we can build those relationships again and get in front of our, you know, people can see us for who we are, not just, you know, on Zoom calls or on a like trying to buy from CADs. So yeah, the transition is going to be hard from, you know, tailored goods to streetwear, but it's a process, right? And you just have to build those relationships.
And when you're talking about what the customer truly wants, how do you really quantify that? How do you know what your customer wants? Is that a data-driven approach? Is that just being cognizant of what goods are flowing in and out, or is it actually a personal question with the folks that are coming in contact with your store?
I think it's a relationship of both. It's a data-driven, absolutely. You see your best classes, you see your best categories, and when you're struggling to get product in, that's what you have to attack, right? But I feel like, you know, at the same time, my sales staff isn't always looking at the plan. They're not always looking at GMROI, and they're not always looking at our OTB, but they feel it. They know what the customer wants. So that's why you have to be in tune with your staff as well.
Excellent point. Yep.
I think for me in that space, something that was super important for us to understand is that with us being in a market where we were attempting to be pioneers and push a culture that wasn't already here, the consumer relies on us a lot. So what we have to do is make them feel comfortable. If they came in here for something that we don't have, we have to help them understand that you can transition into this as well. So that's been super important for us. It's just building a great relationship with the consumer, knowing them, knowing what fits them, and help them understand. Because I think a lot of people wish that they had stylists, and they wish that they had someone to tell them what they felt comfortable wearing,
Yep.
even if they didn't feel comfortable wearing it, you know? So we try to be masters of that and understanding our customers and what they are into in a sense, but also helping them understand how they can build a bridge to get over to something else as well.
That's excellent. I could honestly sit here for another hour and talk to all of you guys about this, but We have come to the end of our webinar, and I wanted to thank all of our panelists. Thank you so much for joining us today, Edwina, Ace, and Brian. This is our first webinar that we've done here with Liberty Fairs. I wanted to remind everybody, the show in Miami, July 10th through the 12th, coming up. We're certainly excited. I think, Dane, we're going to get you on a plane down there. I would love to join you myself if I can.
And just one more very important announcement. Just a very happy birthday to my dear friend Edwina.
Edwina.
It's someone's birthday. So thank you for being a great partner, and we're really excited for these the mix of that omni-channel, in-person, digital, virtual. We'll be there for all.
We're so excited. Ace and Brian, you guys are more than welcome. I can't wait to see you guys on the show floor. And yes, I'm working on getting some new brands in there, something refreshing, something cool, international, all of that can be expected in Miami. Thank you, Management One, for holding this space. This was awesome.
Absolutely, and we're happy to send the word out to our audience as well as more information comes in from you, Edwina.
For sure, for sure.
Thank you all so much, and we will see you on the next session in April.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
You guys
Take care, everyone. Be safe.